Hello, I'm Anna Horsfall, and this is my intercultural communication video um, for my target culture training video. And my culture that I will be focusing on for this video is Ghana. And so, a table of contents for the video. So, I will go over the purpose of the service project that I'm presenting, and then we will go into a little history about Ghana, and then the situations that someone could expect to find themselves in if they are attending the service trip and are needing to communicate with someone from Ghana. And then we will go over communication styles and techniques that are important and recommendations based on those communication styles. And then we will go over an overview at the end of the video. So we'll start with the purpose of the service project. And so the project I'm presenting, and I will go a little more in depth in this later in the presentation, but students from Mount Mercy University, specifically nursing students, will be providing healthcare to people from Ghana in rural communities. And these rural communities will be villages that are located in Ghana. And this is something that is very feasible to do. There are many service opportunities and organizations that we can go through in order to do this service project. And then the reason I'm focusing on um, having the service opportunity for only nursing students is because people will need to have some kind of medical knowledge in order to, um, perform the healthcare that is needed in these rural communities. And throughout this video, I hope that you learn about communication styles and how to communicate with nurses, doctors, and maybe patients that you could encounter in Ghana on this service trip. And so a little about Ghana before we go into the communication side of things. Um, so the history, Ghana is on the west coast of Africa, and it has a very rich and interesting history. It is estimated that habitants started to live in Ghana 10,000 years before Common Era, so that's very interesting. Very rich culture, but one thing that has shaped a lot of the communication and cultural behaviors in Ghana has been its colonization in the 15th century. So the United Kingdom colonized Ghana in the 15th century for the purposes of trading gold. But after that, in the 17th century, it became more popular for European countries to take advantage and promote the slave trade out of Ghana. And then after years of oppression, Ghana gained its independence on March 6th of 1957. Um, the population today, and I believe this was taken from a study in like 2020, is roughly 33 million people. And then the most common language spoken is English. And this goes all the way back to that colonization that occurred in the 15th century. So, um, yeah, that had a lot to do with shaping some of the cultural aspects of Ghana. Politics. So Ghana is a democratic republic. It is run by a president and a vice president as a successor. And then there is a parliament. And then religion, Christianity and Islam are the two primary religions in Ghana. So Christianity makes up about 72% of the population in Ghana, and this is all denominations making up this number. And then Islam is the second largest religion in Ghana with 17.6% of the population um, following Islam. And then the reason this trip is so prevalent and would be important if done would be that there's some major problems in healthcare. First off, there's not a lot of access in Ghana to healthcare, especially in rural villages. And then there's also a lot of issues with poor sanitation, communicable diseases like pneumonia and malaria, and then poor nutrition. And so, based on that history, if we were to go to Ghana and do the service project by providing care, um, the project itself would probably take place during J term, which is when a lot of the abroad service projects occur. And again, providing healthcare to rural communities will be our main focus. And then we can do this through agencies like the Red Cross or International Volunteer HQ. And then an average interaction that I would expect students would have to um, communicate through would be giving vaccinations and then doing assessments. Assessments are incredibly important to determine someone's health status. And so that would be something that people would have to communicate to people from Ghana. And then because communicable diseases are such a prominent thing in Ghana, I'm sure a lot of vaccines would be given. And so in these cases, it's very important for nursing students to be able to communicate what they're doing and why they are doing it. And then for anything, not using medical jargon is very important. And then cultural considerations. So people often self-medicate in Ghana, and this comes from generations of beliefs where herbal supplements and substances can help in healing. And so assessing if someone is using these practices is important, especially if a medication is going to be given to them. And then another thing that should be considered is it is generally inappropriate for male doctors to take care of female doctors. And then one last cultural consideration is that village priests are very important in determining medical care for people. And so it should not be of surprise if people are receiving medical information from a priest. And then some communication rules that are important to apply to the situation. So we went over language a little bit. English is the primary language. However, the government does sponsor 9 other languages. So these languages come from tribes and villages that have passed this language down from generation to generation. And so it is important to remember that because we will be in rural areas, someone might not be proficient in English. And then for the Muslim community, they do speak Hausa, which is the most common language for Islam and Muslim people in Ghana. And then Ghana is a hierarchical society, and so communication needs to be respectful, and respect is based on age, experience, wealth, and position. And the elders are seen as wise and should be shown respect, and they typically make decisions for the family, and even other family members. So that's something important to consider. Greetings is the next communication rule that's important. So there are traditional and native greetings that are specific to tribes. However, foreigners don't typically know these, and so they should not perform them. However, they should provide a handshake as a respectful greeting, and they shake using the right hand. Using titles is something that's also very important to people from Ghana. So if someone has an educational title like doctor, it would be important to use that. And then rules with Muslims, and we will go into this when we talk about recommendations. And then the communication style. So people in Ghana have a very indirect communication style. This means that they don't typically want to cause issues or bring something up that could make someone maybe angry. And so a lot of times they won't give bad news, they won't turn down invitations, and they won't refuse requests. And so this is something that's important to remember when taking care of someone from Ghana. And then finally, on the business side of things, people can expect a first meeting to be very polite, reserved, and formal. And this is because a lot of times in Ghana, the first time they meet someone, they want to build a rapport. And so maybe for business meetings, you won't even talk much about business during that first meeting because they want to get to know you. And something that was interesting, if you are being teased by a local, that indicates that they're starting to become more comfortable with you and relaxed. And so it's not something that should be taken offense by. And then recommendations based on those rules. So addressing the right person. I talked about how the eldest person is and should be the most respected. And in the United States for healthcare, a lot of times we will like address the patient first. It is important in this case though to talk to the eldest person first. So even if it's not the patient, so if it's like a parent, you should shake their hand first. And then greeting. So when meeting someone, shaking hands is the best way to greet someone. However, like I talked about, there are religious considerations with this. So because Islam makes up almost 20% of the religious community in Ghana, it's important to remember that males should not touch females, and so in this case, it would not be proper for a man to shake a woman's hand. And then finally, communication styles. It's important for Americans to remember that we have a very direct communication style, so it's not um, much of a problem for us to ask people for things. However, people in Ghana have that indirect communication style. And so it's important to be very polite and courteous towards people from Ghana, especially if you have bad news, maybe possible diagnoses, and then requests. And finally, with communication styles, people from Ghana may not want to be like an inconvenience to you, even though you're there to provide care. And so they might not want to ask for some basic things. So it's important to always communicate with people from Ghana and maybe ask, like, do you need more water, or do you want to get up and use the bathroom? Um, Offer those requests to people from Ghana because they might not want to ask for it because they don't want to be a burden. And then an overview. So, being culturally aware is one of the most important things in being able to successfully communicate cross-culturally. And one thing I wanted to mention was the cultural values. And cultural values are important in serving as guidelines on how people should act, behave, and what they should believe. And all cultures have different values based on things like history, norms, social organizations. And because every culture has different values, it is important for people to be aware and educated on different practices in order to communicate effectively. And this is something we learned about in our second concept review in class. And it's something that should be applied to situations, especially when providing volunteer service in a different country with a different culture. And another thing is just be willing to learn. And I give my best of luck. One thing to always remember, and I hope you were able to get out of this video, is some of those important cultural um, beliefs and language values. So remembering that English is the most common language spoken. Um, it's important to be very respectful, especially to the eldest person of the family. Um, and remembering that people from Ghana do not have a direct communication style, they have an indirect communication style, so being able to cater to that is very important. And here are my sources. Thank you.